phone rings and I look at it and I don't remember, I actually took a screenshot, but I don't remember if the numbers were all zeros or all ones or all nines. It was something like that. And I later looked it up because I was curious and it said, this is a call from the departed. And I thought, no, okay, that's kind of strange. But when I tell you the story, it kind of makes sense.
Okay.
I answer the phone and I said, hello. And this very calm voice says, yes, Father. And I said, yes. He said, it was a male voice. He said, I want you to know that the relic has been picked up. I said, oh, great. Thank God. And he said, you sound very tired and you have a busy day tomorrow. So you should go back to sleep. God bless you. And the phone hung up. Well, I later checked and it was not Bishop Theodosius.
Okay.
I don't know who it was who called me.
Really?
Because they didn't identify themselves and this number was all zeros or all ones or all nines. It wasn't a San Francisco number. It wasn't. So, and I took a screenshot because I thought people will not believe me when I took a screenshot of the numbers. I believe it was St. John who called and said, go back to sleep. You sound tired, but the relic has been retrieved. So the relic arrives. And that week, the world shut down because of COVID.
I like to get people to tell me stories about saints, and they get excited, and I just sit back, kind of feel like a kid, someone's giving, and so now that I have you with me, I know you mentioned it while you were on Counterflow, the connection with your parish and St. John Maximovitch. So anything you want to tell us about St. John, go for it.
Boy, I'm going to start back at the beginning when we first. Let me just start at the beginning, okay?
Yeah.
We had until about 2 years ago a very faithful, wonderful deacon with us, a monk, Father Seraphim, who now has been ordained a priest and at the bishop's request was sent to New Jersey to serve one of our churches there. We don't hold that against the bishop. We understand what needs to happen, but we miss him dearly. And he really introduced me to St. John. He had been in the Russian church, a Filipino man, raised in the Catholic Church in the Philippines, and came to know St. John and understand St. John and really speak with St. John even in his Catholicism near the end of his time in the Catholic monastery. And so when he came to the United States, he went to one of our Russian monasteries, all English, that was in New York at the time, and continued this love for St. John. And for whatever reason, kind of his monastic community there, from the abbot on down, I think really had a good relationship with St. John. I don't know if they had a relic of St. John, I don't recall, but they found St. John's intercession to be very powerful. And so when he came to us, the deacon, maybe 6 years ago, he's been gone now 2, so he was only here about 4 years. When he came to us 6 years ago, he instantly began saying to me, whenever I would express some concern about things, pray to St. John. And then he said, we should really ask Metropolitan Hilarion of blessed memory now of Rocor. So again, not my bishop, not my metropolitan. So this was a request if we could somehow have a relic of St. John. And this is where I think the remarkable nature of St. John in my life and our parish really began. So I wrote to Vladika Ilarion and humbly requested a relic of St. John, which he very happily and very quickly, he was one of the few metropolitans who would email you back within minutes. He wrote back and said, and very short, it was never more than a sentence, but it was, yes, you may have it. I will speak with Bishop Theodosius of Rocor, who's, I think, Bishop of Seattle, if I'm not mistaken, but resides in San Francisco, and he will arrange for it. He was the one who was sort of the caretaker of the relics of St. John in terms of distributing them to people. And now, 6 years ago, I don't know what's happened since then, but 6 years ago, my understanding was it was very rare to be given a relic of St. John. People may have gone there and sent letter or dropped letters or sent letters or had oil from his lampada, but to get an actual piece of his incorrupt flesh was really rare. There were maybe 10 places in America that had a true relic of St. John. So I was really blown away when Metropolitan Ilarion says, yes, I'll work it out. Call Bishop Theodosius and he will work this out for you. So we coordinated everything. And from Detroit, this is a long flight. You're not going to send it by mail. You're going to fly to get St. John. So at the time, not that we're a wealthy parish now, but now it would be much easier to say, yes, we can afford a plane ticket. At the time, we were a very small parish, and this was all pre-COVID. And so, we're having pancake breakfast to try to raise money to buy a plane ticket to fly to San Francisco. And if I remember correctly, even buying the plane ticket, we couldn't afford 2 of them. So I had asked our monk to fly there, to receive the relic from Bishop Theodosius, and to basically fly back on a red eye so he could be back for liturgy. So we had raised the money, and we had a ticket that we knew we wanted to purchase. And at the time, my parish council was very different, and so I wanted to run this by them because there were some people that could kvetch a little bit if you spent, too much money. And I'd sent this thing out, and I said, we'd like to buy this ticket. It'll be $600 or something round trip. And it was crickets, no response.
Okay.
And this was maybe in like December of must have been 2018. And I was so frustrated. Just, why do they not understand the timeliness of, we need this relic, and we've had the pancake breakfast, and it felt, what's the phrase? It felt like herding cats. Why is that person not responding? And I just, I was not happy about this. And so I didn't do any. I thought, okay, fine. You don't want the relic. We'll wait. We'll wait till we get a better fare again. The airfare had gone way up. And so finally in about March, I said to the people, this is going on for too long. They've got this relic. They're going to prepare it for us. We need to go. And so they said, okay, fine, buy the ticket. So we bought the ticket. We put Deacon Seraphim on an airplane. He flew to San Francisco. I think he arrived like early Friday morning in San Francisco. He went to the cathedral. He bought a couple of icons because we didn't even have an icon of St. John, hand painted, laid it on the full relics of St. John. And then Saturday morning, he was going to go to the monastery where Bishop Theodosius was. He was going to see the relics, see Bishop Theodosius, go to vigil, receive the relic, get on a red eye, and fly home. Great. As Deacon Seraphim gets the relics and gets on an airplane in Los Angeles, I think it was San Francisco to LA back to Detroit.
Okay.
As he's leaving Los Angeles on the airplane, gets in the air, LAX airport shuts down because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
So he just where he's at, I don't remember, but he's in the air.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is remarkable that thank God he's gotten out, and he's gotten out with the relic. He's holding it on his person. And I've traveled with relics a few times, and I've never had a problem. In fact, I've kept them in things with metal, for example. You're always worried the security is going to go off and they're going to stop you and say, what is this? And technically you're transporting human remains. And so there's an issue. No problem, right? Okay. He's got the metal reliquary, goes through security, gets on the plane, gets in the air, LAX closes down. Well, the remarkableness of this all doesn't stop there. I'm, of course, in bed because we have liturgy the next morning, and he's going to arrive at about 5 o'clock in the morning in Detroit, meet me at the church, and we're going to bring the relics in. About 1 o'clock in the morning, my phone was next to our bed, where it always is, and the phone rings. And I look at it, and I don't remember, I actually took a screenshot, but I don't remember if the numbers were all zeros or all ones or all nines. It was something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I later looked it up because I was curious, and it said, of course, on Google, this is a call from the departed. And I thought, okay, that's kind of strange. But when I tell you the story, it kind of makes sense.
Okay.
I answer the phone, and I said, hello. And this very calm voice says, yes, Father. And I said, yes. He said, it was a male voice. He said, I want you to know that the relic has been picked up. I said, oh, great, thank God. And he said, you sound very tired, and you have a busy day tomorrow, so you should go back to sleep. God bless you. And the phone hung up. Well, I later checked, and it was not Bishop Theodosius.
Okay.
I don't know who it was who called me.
Really?
Because they didn't identify themselves, and this number was all zeros or all ones or all nines. It wasn't a San Francisco number. It wasn't. So, and I took a screenshot because I thought people will not believe me when I took a screenshot of the numbers. I believe it was St. John who called and said, go back to sleep. You sound tired, but the relic has been retrieved. So the relic arrives, and that week, the world shut down because of COVID. And we process the relic in that Sunday. We serve the Akathis to St. John right after the Divine Liturgy. And I think in the moment, the people here did not fully grasp what a miracle this was that we received him.
Yeah.
We were supposed to get him in December. I was mad. We get him in March. Well, clearly there's a reason why, because COVID was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And from that day, we have a little kind of handmade shrine in our church to St. John, where there's an icon of him and his relic and 3 lampadas hanging. And from that day, I said, after every Sunday divine liturgy, we are going to process with his relics outside around the church. And initially it was to protect us from COVID, because we didn't change our practices. I mean, again, as you've heard me say, people were free to do what they wanted. Mm-hmm. Some people wore masks. Some people said, I'm not coming to church. That's fine. Everyone is free to do what they want.
Yep.
But we were not going to be scared.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed open. And there were only, in all of Michigan, maybe 3 or 4 churches, not even Orthodox, just churches that stayed open. We had, the OCA church down the road, other churches as well, that had Pascha on Zoom. And I can't imagine this, Yep. And so we had St. John, we processed around with him every week, and people would say, why are you doing? Yeah, we know he protects, but why? And I would always tell the story of when St. John was on the island of Tubabao in the Philippines. And he would go out every night. I don't recall if it was an icon of the Mother of God or an icon of Christ, but he would bless the island in 4 directions every night. And this island was known for typhoons. No typhoon. He takes his people, they leave the island. I don't know if it was the next day or the day after, a typhoon decimates the island. So clearly St. John's presence and his blessing protects us. And so people have asked me, they don't anymore because they know the answer, but they used to ask, like, well, when are we going to stop doing that? And I would always say, when I'm dead or gone. That's when. So to this day, even sometimes now, we've been doing it since 2019. So 6 years, every Sunday. Rain, snow. Some weeks I'll say to people, and the whole parish goes, not just me, the whole parish.
Yeah, okay.
And sometimes if it's, 10 below and snowing like crazy, I'll get a mom or two who will say, is it okay if, Bobby stays inside? That's fine. And I'll tell people, it's icy, it's snowy. We're going to take the relics.
Yep.
You stay in here and sing. And they typically sing, O Lord, save thy people, or the Troparion to St. John. But now, every Sunday, there are 100 or more people processing around the church with the relics of St. John.
Glory to God.
We received a blessing from Metropolitan Ilarion, because he's the one who gave us the relics, to keep a lampada. And we light it when someone is here. It's an oil lampada. But to keep that lit when we're here, and then to anoint people with oil from that. So that sits, it basically touches the frame of the icon. And unless there is something that outranks St. John, for example, when the Mother of God comes, she will outrank St. John. So the blessing will come from her icon, not from his. We received 3 weeks ago a piece of the true cross from the Patriarch of Jerusalem. Okay. That, of course, when that comes out, that outranks St. John. Yes. But short of that, St. John and St. Innocent's icon and relics are right by his. So I bless people with the lampada there, and I say every time, through the intercessions of St. Innocent and St. John, may Christ our God have mercy on you and save you. Every service, whether it's a vigil with 50 people, a weekday vespers with 5, an akathist with 2, or a divine liturgy with 120, you're going to get anointed with that oil, everyone. And we also asked if we could have a blessing to receive letters here, because we do have people that, it's probably not every service, but I would say almost weekly, people come into the temple here and they will write a letter to St. John.
Okay.
And people say, why do you write to St. John? First of all, he's alive. He's not dead. More alive now than he was when he was walking this earth. And there are plenty of stories from the life of St. John where people would write him letters. And there are even stories where they'd send a letter to St. John. They go to the post office. They drop a letter in the box. St. John, please, help me find a job, or heal my daughter pray for my daughter. And this is in the 1950s and 60s. They're sending letters to San Francisco, to his office. They would get home, pull out of their mailbox a letter from St. John addressing the very thing they had just dropped a letter off of the mail for him about. So, and that's how he communicated. There were no computers. He wrote letters to everyone. He read letters, he wrote letters. And so to this day, people still write letters to him. You can send them to San Francisco. They'll put them under his body. I don't know if you've been to San Francisco to see his relics there, but I've been one time. I was there a year ago in June for the anniversary of his glorification. There must have been 3,000 people there. I mean, his cathedral that he built has 2 balconies, actually, 2 choir lofts. The top one, I didn't go up, but it's so high, I don't think I'd want to look down. And they were packed. I mean, people hanging over the balconies, and the piety and the presence of St. John, and the cursed root icon was there as well, which of course he was with when he died. It was palpable. And people have received so many miracles from St. John. And here as well, so they write letters to him. I will get letters occasionally in the mail. I've told people, I have a priest friend who's going through a tough time, write to St. John. He wrote a letter to him, and I say, nobody reads them but St. John. So I don't open them. We have actually it's an icon kiosk, an icon box that's clear that I just emptied of an icon, and I had my guys basically drill holes and screw it to the side of this shrine, and people put them in there. And so when it fills up, I take the box off, I open it up, they go into a brown paper bag, I take them out to our burn bag, and I burn all the letters.
Okay.
So St. John is the only one who reads them. I don't. In fact, one time, I think the only thing I've ever seen is Dear Vladika, because they had folded it in such a way that was, I don't read any of the letters. I don't open them. That's not for me. That's for him.
I love this. Sorry.
And so the box right now is packed. I try to empty it about once a month, once every 6 weeks. And I don't know how many letters get in there. I don't count them, but there must be hundreds every month that are in there. Many of the letters I don't know people are even writing because they just know this is our saint. This is what we do. Mm-hmm. But I tell people, be very specific. Mm-hmm. I could tell you 100 stories. I'll tell you just 2 that are really significant. One of them is for my own wife. She just this year was able to leave the public school. She had taught for 20 years, but we really felt the school district she was in was fine. There was really no kind of moral issues. It just, we wanted to go a different route with our kids. But when she got this last job, which was really a godsend to us when she got it 5 or 6 years ago, she had interviewed and I think came right here or something. I don't recall the timing, but it was very soon after the interview, like within an hour, and dropped a letter into St. John about this. And like, as she's walking out of the church, gets a phone call saying, we'd like to offer you the job. I had a woman in here who was in a very tough spot with a marriage, and she was looking for guidance, and everything I said did not seem to fit, and she didn't like it. And I said, you know what? Go right to St. John. Uh-huh. Clearly what I'm saying is not resonating. Lay it out for him. And I'll never forget, I walked in a few times. She was not a parishioner here, actually. I'd walked in a few times, and I saw her on the floor on the first stair of the Amvon writing this letter, because we don't have pews and things. So she was on the floor writing this. She dropped it in the box, goes out to her car. There's a voicemail answering the very thing she had written to St. John about. And I said to her, sometimes he takes a while and sometimes it's like this.
Wow.
The last one, I think that is maybe most significant given what it did for us as a parish. I was a hospital chaplain until about 2 years ago. I was a full-time chaplain until about 2 years ago. I was a hospital chaplain until about a year and a half ago. But in my full-time work, I did a lot with trauma and patients who, gunshot victims. And it was a very rough neighborhood, a big level 1 trauma center. And I also dealt a lot with palliative care. So I'd work with nurses and doctors who were trying to set end of life plans. And I found that dressed as an Orthodox priest in a cassock, people, even if they were not people who were religious, generally respected my presence and my perspective. Mm-hmm. And so I developed a very close friendship with actually an Orthodox woman who was a doctor on the palliative care team, a Romanian woman. And she came to me one day in my office, which she never did. We had a hallway just off the chapel in this hospital, and I would see her on the floors, but never came down. And she sat down and just starts weeping. I said, I could tell this was not a hospital thing. This was I'm coming to the Orthodox priest. Mm-hmm. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, my dad, she lived at home, she was unmarried. She said, my dad, who may have been in his early 70s, had a really bad biopsy from an endoscopy where they go down your throat and check something in your esophagus. And I may get some of the details wrong, but it was something like she said, it's my fault because I'm a doctor, a really good doctor, by the way. And I kept telling him, Dad, don't worry about that, because it was COVID time. Like, don't worry about going and getting the end. We'll do it when stuff's better. You don't want to go through the process. You got to wear a mask. We'll do it later. Got a bad biopsy. And they were convinced this was cancer. And I said, write a letter to St. John. Mm-hmm. And God bless her. She knew of St. John, but didn't know St. John well. And so she goes to the gift shop in the hospital and gets like a greeting card. Okay. And writes a letter to St. John.
Okay.
May not have been a get well soon card, but it was something like that. And she writes this letter and brings it back and puts on the outside, Bishop John. Mm-hmm. And I said, great, I'll take it to church. I took it to church and I dropped it by his reliquary. And we had just within about a month of that we got cameras for the outside for the parking lot, like a security camera. We didn't have anything like that. And I get this alert a day or two later, and there's this woman that looks just like her standing in our parking lot in the pouring rain, because the doors are locked. I'm working full time, facing where the altar was at the church. And I'm like, this looks just like this doctor. So I text her, are you at my church? And she said, no, my mom is. Well, her mom looked a lot like her.
Yeah.
She can't go in, but she wants to pray to St. John. In the pouring rain, she's getting soaked. And first of all, I thought, what piety that you would come. You knew this is where he lives, and you're going to come here. You don't even know St. John, really. You're Romanian Orthodox, and you're a very pious woman, but you don't know St. John like I know St. John, like we know St. John. But she had heard from her daughter, this man answers prayers. But 2 days later, she comes to church, this doctor does, with her mom and her dad. I don't believe her dad speaks English. I think only Romanian. And she's like crying as she comes up to venerate the cross. And she said, the biopsy came back negative. And she hands me a card and she said, this is a donation from my family. We are so grateful. Do whatever you want. And it was a check for $5,000. And I said, we're going to build a small chapel to St. John outside so that people can come at any time. It doesn't have a relic. I can't leave a relic out there, but it has an icon that's been blessed on his relics and has oil on it, which has been out there probably 3 years, and you can still see the oil on the icon. It's been blessed with oil from his shrine in here. And people leave letters out there. People come. It's funny, I don't ever see them because I don't get all the notifications, even though it's just off our parking lot. But almost every time I go out there, I see a different letter with different handwriting. Mm-hmm. There are envelopes, and one might be in Russian, one might be in Romanian, one might be in, and I think, well, someone else has come and prayed. And so we dedicated that chapel to St. John, I believe it was 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago now, on his feast in July. And we will occasionally serve Vespers out there when the weather's nice. I've served Divine Liturgy out there. I've asked for a blessing. I take the antimons off the altar, especially if it's a weekday liturgy in the fall. It's beautiful. It's cool. The sun comes up over the church. It actually gets warm because the sun, we're facing east where the parking lot is. The sun comes up, and we've had Divine Liturgy out there. So God forgive me, because we have so many wonderful relics in our church, almost 45, I think. And sometimes it's until I talk to someone like you and I can see your reaction, I forget how blessed we are.
Yeah.
I forget what St. John has done. Mm-hmm. And I'm very sorry to the Lord that I've forgotten how merciful and how wonderful these saints are. And I'm sorry to them because they are so wonderful to us. As we say at Vigil in the prayer the priest prays right before the gospel, O God, who rests in the saints. I love that language. Who rests, his presence is in the saints because they are in him and he is in them. And St. John is, for us, he's not our patron. And I always want to give due respect to St. Innocent because he's also done his relics are incorrupt. His relic is here as well. But it's almost like St. Innocent has opened up his heart and his church to allow St. John to have a place here. And
wow, yeah,
we are so blessed. And I think the miracles that he's wrought, I probably know 10% of them. but they are remarkable. And I would say to you, all I can say is, whoever told you to entrust your especially missionary work and trying to spread the gospel, chief among them is St. John.
So Father and the guys.
Father and the guys, though, it sounds like we just started our first collab band.
It's okay.
Look at that scar.
It's okay.
Look at that scar.
He's so hardcore.
That should be an album cover right there.
What are your instruments you play?
In that one, the last time I played with somebody, I played with my sons, which is like a highlight of my life.
But I'm trying to do more live records. AI's everywhere, and it's starting to drive me nuts. I want to do a very Orthodox record, but I want to get an Orthodox drummer, and I don't know one yet.
Oh, Orthodox drummer, Buck Johnson.
Yeah. Buck plays? No way.
Oh, yeah.
I never cared about playing fast just to play fast, but I always wanted to be able to do it if it was required. So for me, it was always a composition. And I already like some of Prince's stuff. Yeah, so Prince got me here. Eddie Van Halen was, yeah, sure. He had some kind of wild energy. Yngwie Malmsteen, Randy Rhoads.
I grew up listening to a lot of soul and funk. Like my dad owned a record store, gospel, post-punk, and goth. The Clash, Pistols, and like post-punk stuff like PIL, New Order. Joy Division. Later on, I got really into Stax.
Justin lost power? Like in the house?
I like Father Turbo. I'll keep talking to him. He's great.
Yeah, he's all right.
It's funny when I met Jay. He was just like, "Oh, you're kind of a brawler."
Oh, Jay Dyer?
Yeah, he's like,
yeah.
I thought I could take you, but
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay seems like he's scrappy in a bar fight. You know what I mean? If you just needed someone for some backup, he could be a good third.
Word no more network.